Okay, Chamber Secrets, Chapter 3, Part 2. Since my first part was interrupted by my, I guess I call it Mexican lasagna. So basically, my Mexican lasagna, the timer went off, and so it's second part of this book. So, Chapter 3. Yeah, so real life, as you see, I'm not trying to be a YouTube star because if I was, that would be all like cut and nicely spliced together. But I'm not going to do all that. There'll just be 2 videos for this chapter. Okay. And I can't see without these. Back to the gnome holes. He let go of the gnome's ankles. It flew 20 feet in the air and landed with a thud in the field over the hedge. Pitiful, said Fred. I bet I can't get mine beyond that stump. Harry learned quickly not to feel too sorry for the gnomes. He decided just to drop the first one he caught over the hedge. But the gnome, sensing weakness, sank its razor-sharp teeth into Harry's finger. And he had a hard job shaking it off until, wow, Harry, that must have been, 50 feet. The air was soon thick with flying gnomes. See, they're not too bright, said George, seizing 5 or 6 gnomes at once. The moment they know the denoming's going on, they storm out to have a look. You'd think they'd have learned by now just to stay put. Soon the crowd of gnomes in the field started walking away in a straggling line, their little shoulders hunched. They'll be back, said Ron, as they watched the gnomes disappear in the hedge on the other side of the field. They love it here. Dad's too soft with them. He thinks they're funny. Bing. Just then the front door slammed. He's back, said George. Dad's home. They hurried through the garden and back into the house. Mr. Weasley was slumped in a kitchen chair with his glasses off and his eyes closed. He was a thin man, going bald, but the little hair he had was as red as any of his children's. He was wearing long green robes, which were dusty and travel-worn. What a night, he mumbled, groping for the teapot as they all sat down around him. Trying to figure out what voice he's going to have. So if it changes, excuse me, but he might just change. Or someone else is going to have his voice too. 9 raids. 9. In all, Mundungus. Fletcher tried to put a hex on me when I had my back turned. Mr. Weasley took a long gulp of tea and sighed. Find anything, Dad? Said Fred eagerly. All I got were a few shrinking door keys and a biting kettle. Yawned Mr. Weasley. Oh, some pretty nasty stuff. That wasn't my department, though. Mortlake was taken away for questioning about some extremely old ferrets. But that's the Committee on Experimental Charms, thank goodness. Why would anyone bother making door keys shrink? Said George. Just muggle baiting, said Mr. Weasley. Some a key that keeps shrinking to nothing, so they can never find it. And when they need it, of course, it's very hard to convict anyone because no muggle would admit that keys keep shrinking. They'll insist they just keep losing it. Bless them, they'll go to any lengths to ignore magic, even if it's staring them in the face. But the things our lot have taken to enchanting, you wouldn't believe. Like cars, for instance. Mrs. Weasley had appeared, holding a long poker like a sword. Mr. Weasley's eyes jerked open. He stared guiltily at his wife. Cars, Molly dear. Yes, Arthur, cars, said Mrs. Weasley, her eyes flashing. Imagine a wizard find a rusty old car and tell his wife all he wanted to do with it was take it apart to see how it worked, while really he was enchanting it to make it fly. Mr. Weasley blinked. Well, dear, I think you'll find that he would be quite within the law to do that, even if he maybe would have done better to tell his wife the truth. There's a loophole in the law you'll find. As long as he wasn't intending to fly the car, the fact that the car could fly wouldn't. Arthur Weasley, you made sure there was a loophole when you wrote that law. shouted Mrs. Weasley, just so you can carry on tinkering with all that muggle rubbish in your shed. And for your information, Harry arrived in the morning in the car. You weren't intending to fly. Harry, said Mr. Weasley blankly. Harry who? He looked around, saw Harry, and jumped. Good Lord, is it Harry Potter? Very pleased to meet you. Ron's told us so much about you. Your sons flew that car to Harry's house and back last night, shouted Mrs. Weasley. What have you got to say about that, eh? Did you really? Said Mr. Weasley eagerly. Did it go all right? I mean, he faltered as sparks flew from Mrs. Weasley's eyes. That was very wrong, boys. Very wrong indeed. Let's leave them to it, Ron muttered to Harry as Mrs. Weasley swelled like a bullfrog. Come on, I'll show you my bedroom. They slipped out of the kitchen and down a narrow passageway to an uneven staircase, which wound its way zigzagging up through the house. On the third landing, a door stood ajar. Harry just caught sight of a pair of bright brown eyes staring at him before it closed with a snap. Ginny, said Ron, you don't know how weird it is for her to be this shy. She never shuts up normally. They climbed 2 more flights until they reached a door with peeling paint and a small plaque on it, saying, Ronald's room. Harry stepped in, his head almost touching the sloping ceiling, and blinked. It was like walking into a furnace. Nearly everything in Ron's room seemed to be a violent shade of orange. The bedspread, the walls, even the ceiling. Then Harry realized that Ron had covered nearly every inch of the shabby wallpaper with posters of the same 7 witches and wizards, all wearing bright orange robes, carrying broomsticks, and waving energetically. Your Quidditch team, said Harry. The Chudley Cannons, said Ron, pointing at the orange bedspread, which was emblazoned with 2 giant black C's and a speeding cannonball. 9th in the league. Ron's school spellbooks were stacked untidily in a corner next to a pile of comics that all seemed to feature The Adventure of Martin Miggs, the Mad Muggle. Ron's magic wand was lying on top of a fish tank full of frog spawn on the windowsill, next to his fat gray rat, Scabbers, who was snoozing in a patch of sun. Harry stepped over a pack of self-shuffling playing cards on the floor and looked out of the tiny window. In the field far below, he could see a gang of gnomes sneaking, one by one, back through the Weasley's hedge. Then he turned to look at Ron, who's watching him almost nervously, as though waiting for his opinion. It's a bit small, said Ron quickly. Not like that room you had with the muggles. And I'm right underneath the ghoul in the attic. He's always banging on the pipes and groaning. But Harry grinning widely, said, This is the best house I've ever been in. Ron's ears went pink. Bing. And that's the end of chapter 3 of today's adventures of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Y'all have a good one.